Tonight, we're stepping into the real Wild West. Forget the Hollywood version with its noble cowboys, quick-draw duels, and perfectly timed dramatic showdowns. Tonight is your pulling back the curtain and stepping into the real Wild West, a place that was as unforgiving as it was untamed. This wasn't a world of clean-shaven heroes riding off into sunsets. It was gritty, brutal, and downright dangerous. Survival wasn't just a challenge. It was a gamble, and every day was a roll of the dice. You might think you've got what it takes to handle it. Maybe you consider yourself tough, resourceful, or ready for whatever life throws your way. But the Wild West wasn't just about grit. It was chaos, unpredictability, and some of the harshest conditions imaginable. There's a reason they called it wild, and trust me, living there for even a single day might make you think twice about your odds. If you're enjoying these kinds of stories, I'd be so grateful if you'd take a moment to give this video a quick like or subscribe. It might seem small, but it helps more than you can imagine to keep bringing you these tales of history and adventure. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? Drop a comment with your location and what time it is where you are. It's one of my favorite parts of this channel, seeing our little global community come together over these stories. Now, settle in, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan or a little background hum, and get comfortable. Together, we're about to dive into the harsh, raw, and untamed world of the Wild West and explore why surviving even a single day in this brutal frontier might be more than most of us could handle. So, let's peel back the layers of legend and go through the first 24 hours of a journey out west. I'll show you hour by agonizing hour why the most dangerous things in the Wild West were the things you never saw coming, and why just surviving one day was a victory against staggering, almost insurmountable odds. The 4 a.m. delusion, hope and hard labor. The day starts not with a gentle sunrise, but with the violent crack of a rifle, or the sharp, piercing call of a bugle, a sound that slices through the pre-dawn cold like a knife. It's 4 a.m. The air is thin and frigid, so cold it stings your lungs with every breath. For a split second, huddled under a single thin, coarse blanket, you might feel a fleeting spark of that great adventure. You're a pioneer, a trailblazer, forging a new life out west. This is the grand dream that sold you on this whole perilous enterprise, the vision of open skies and fertile land that you cling to in the darkest moments. That feeling of romance, of heroic purpose, lasts for about 5 seconds. The moment your bare feet touch the cold, damp, and unforgiving earth, the brutal reality of your situation crashes down upon you like a physical weight. There is no quiet moment for reflection, no easing into the day with a warm cup of coffee. There is only work, immediate and all-consuming. That bugle call wasn't an invitation, it was a command, the starting pistol for a race you can never win. The next 3 hours are a frantic, desperate scramble of back-breaking, soul-crushing labor. First, you have to find the animals. The oxen. By 6:30 a.m., while the men are still wrestling to hitch the massive, grumpy oxen to the heavy wagons, the women are in a desperate race against the clock. Every piece of bedding must be aired out, folded, and stowed away with meticulous care. The breakfast dishes, a few tin plates and mugs, are washed with a splash of precious, often dirty water, which you carry in barrels and guard jealously. Then every single item must be packed back into the wagon like a complex game of Tetris. You learn with brutal speed that a badly packed wagon, with its weight distributed unevenly, can easily tip over on the rough, rutted ground. It's a catastrophic mistake you only make once. By the time the final command to move out echoes through the camp at 7 a.m., you've already put in 3 hours of hard, relentless physical labor. Your muscles ache with a deep, familiar soreness. Your hands are raw and chapped from the cold and the work. You're already covered in a fine layer of dust and soot. The sun isn't even fully up, but you feel a profound weariness that should come at the end of a long day, not at the very start. The flicker of hope you might have felt in the dark is long gone, extinguished by the grim, repetitive knowledge that this was all just the prelude. The real ordeal, the 15 to 20 mile journey on foot, hasn't even begun. The 7 a.m. grind, the tyranny of the wagon. The trumpeter sounds "Wagons ho!" and with a collective groan of wood and a straining of leather, the long train of wagons lurches forward into the growing light. This is the image we all know, isn't it? The majestic line of white-topped wagons rolling gracefully across the endless prairie, a symbol of progress and American destiny. But here is the second great pervasive myth of the West. You are not riding in that wagon. Almost no one is. Contrary to what a century of Hollywood has shown us, those wagons weren't for people. They were rough, springless, brutally uncomfortable vehicles packed to their canvas roofs with the absolute essentials for survival. Hundreds of pounds of flour and bacon, tools, spare parts, and maybe a few precious heirlooms you couldn't bear to leave behind. Riding inside was a bone-jarring, nauseating ordeal, saved only for the desperately sick, the gravely injured, or for women in the final stages of childbirth. For everyone else, men, women, and any child old enough to stand, the great journey west was made on foot. So your day, your real day, truly begins now. You walk, and you walk, and you walk. You walk 15, maybe 20 miles if the trail is kind. You walk through ankle-deep dust so fine it feels like flour, rising in thick, choking clouds with every step, filling your lungs, stinging your eyes, and coating the inside of your mouth with a gritty film. You walk through thick, clinging mud that sucks at your boots with every step, threatening to pull them right off your feet. Your lips crack and bleed and blister in the punishingly dry air, and the only available remedy, the only thing to soothe them, is the foul-tasting, gritty axle grease you scoop from the wagon wheels. The wagon itself, your lifeline, the vessel carrying all you own, is also a potential coffin on wheels. It is a constant, gnawing source of anxiety. You listen to its sounds with the focus of a surgeon. The prairie heat would shrink the wooden wheels, causing the heavy iron rims to loosen and sometimes just roll right off, leaving you utterly stranded. A snapped axle, a common occurrence on the uneven ground, could mean being left behind by the wagon train, a virtual death sentence in this vast emptiness. But the most common and horrific danger posed by the wagon was much more direct, much more sudden. Getting run over by those heavy iron-rimmed wheels was one of the leading causes of accidental death on the entire trail. It happened in a heartbeat, born from a single moment of exhaustion or inattention. A tired child, desperate for a moment's rest, tries to climb onto the moving wagon tongue, slips, and vanishes beneath the crushing weight of the wheels. An adult, dazed and exhausted after hours of trudging through the heat, missteps on a patch of uneven ground and gets pulled under. The diaries of the pioneers are filled with entries of chilling brevity that capture this everyday horror. One grieving father wrote simply, Mr. Harvey's young little boy, Richard, 8 years old, went to get in the wagon and fell from the tongue. The wheels run over him and mashed his head and kill him stone dead. He never moved. The oxen pulling the wagon were another constant peril. They were immense, powerful, and often unpredictable animals. A sudden thunderstorm, the buzz of a rattlesnake hidden in the grass, or just a moment of panic could spook them into a stampede. Wagons would be overturned in an instant, crushing people beneath them and scattering precious, irreplaceable supplies across the prairie. People were dragged, kicked, and gored by the very same animals their lives depended upon. So as you walk, hour after hour, you are not just tired. You are in a state of constant high alert. Your senses are screaming. You are watching the ground for snakes and prairie dog holes. You are listening for the telltale rattle of a loose wheel or the groan of a stressed axle. You are keeping a wary, respectful distance from the massive hooves of the oxen and the unforgiving, deadly path of the wheels. That wagon isn't your cozy home on the range. It's a 2-ton beast of burden that demands endless work, endless vigilance, and threatens instant, brutal death for a single momentary mistake. And you have 10 more hours of this to go. The midday killer, tainted water, and torment. Around noon, after 5 grueling hours of walking, a halt is called for nooning. It's a brief 1-hour respite from the misery of the march, but it offers little genuine comfort. In fact, this short break introduces what was arguably the single greatest and most terrifying threat on the entire journey: the water. You are desperately, agonizingly thirsty. Your tongue feels thick in your mouth. Your throat is raw with dust. You finally get to a creek or a river, and the sight of water, any water, feels like a miracle. But this is the same water source that thousands of emigrants and their livestock ahead of you have already used. Their cattle have waded in it, defecated in it. They have washed their filthy clothes in it, and they have relieved themselves near its banks. The water you are about to drink is often a murky, lukewarm, brown soup of silt, animal waste, and filth. But it's wet. You don't know what a germ is. You don't understand the concept of bacteria. You just know that your body is screaming for liquid, and you cup your hands and drink deeply. This is the very moment a death sentence was often unknowingly passed. The water along the Platte River in particular was teeming with cholera, the unseen scourge of the overland trails. It was a disease so fast, so violent, and so horrifying that it struck a unique kind of terror into the hearts of the pioneers. A person could be perfectly healthy at 7 a.m., drink from a contaminated stream at noon, and by mid-afternoon the first symptoms would hit like a thunderclap. It began with severe, uncontrollable diarrhea. This was followed by violent projectile vomiting and excruciating abdominal cramps that would cause the strongest man to double over in agony. The dehydration was so extreme and so rapid that it caused the body to collapse. The skin would turn a terrifying bluish-gray color, the eyes would sink deep into their sockets, and the body would go into hypovolemic shock. Someone who was healthy and sharing breakfast with their family could be dead and buried in a shallow grave by supper. One traveler, John Clark, wrote in his 1852 diary of stumbling upon a camp ravaged by the disease. "We pitched our tents, but soon found we were in a distressed crowd. 1 woman and 2 men lay dead on the grass, and some more ready to die of cholera. There was no real treatment. The medical kits the pioneers carried, filled with things like laudanum and camphor, were useless against it. The only defense was to keep moving, to try and outrun the epidemic, to pray that the invisible killer wasn't already inside you. And burials were swift and grim, often right in the middle of the trail where the subsequent wagons would trample the earth to hide the scent from wolves. And even if you somehow dodged cholera, there was always typhoid and dysentery, the bloody flux, contracted from the same bad water and poorly preserved food. While this invisible killer silently circulates through the camp, you eat your cold midday meal, some leftover bacon, a piece of hard bread, all of it covered in the fine, inescapable dust that gets into everything you own. You have just 1 hour to choke down your food, rehydrate with what might be poison, and prepare your aching body for the afternoon's march. You look at your family, your friends, your fellow travelers, and you can't help but wonder who drank from the wrong spot, who will be the next to double over in pain, whose shallow, unmarked grave will be the next to be dug into the trail before nightfall. The afternoon gauntlet, rivers and random violence. At 1 p.m. the call comes to move out again. The grim, short break is over. You haul your aching body back onto your feet, and the afternoon sun is a merciless, blinding hammer in the sky. The exhaustion is no longer a simple feeling of being tired. It is now a deep, persistent, grinding ache in your bones and in your soul. But don't worry. The trail has entirely new ways to kill you this afternoon. Up ahead, a line of green trees snakes across the horizon. That means one thing: a river. River crossings were among the most dangerous, chaotic, and feared events of the entire journey. These weren't calm, bridged rivers you could casually cross. They were wild, unpredictable torrents, their currents strong and their depths unknown. Drowning was the second most common cause of accidental death on the trail, right after disease and wagon accidents. Imagine the scene. It is pure, unadulterated pandemonium. Men are shouting commands that are instantly lost in the roar of the rushing water. Animals, sensing the danger, are terrified, braying, bucking, and panicking, their eyes wide with fear. Wagons, heavy and cumbersome, get their wheels stuck on unseen rocks or become hopelessly mired in the thick, muddy bottom. A strong, unseen current could catch a wagon and tip it over in a terrifying instant. Anyone clinging to the sides would be thrown into the churning, muddy water, with the heavy canvas top acting like a death shroud, trapping them underneath as they struggled. The loss in that moment was total, not just the loss of a life, but your wagon and every single thing you owned in the world, sinking to the bottom of the river, gone forever. Even if you make it across, soaked and shivering, the danger isn't over. The draining exertion of the crossing and the general fatigue of the afternoon brought a heightened risk of another common killer: the accidental gunshot. After disease and wagon accidents, firearms were the third leading cause of death on the trail, and it was almost never in a dramatic gunfight. It was almost always just exhausted, thoughtless carelessness. Everyone was armed, but not for high-noon duels with outlaws. Guns were for hunting game for the pot. The grim reality was that far more pioneers were killed by their own guns or the guns of their friends and family than by any external enemy. A rifle, bouncing around loose in the back of a wagon, could discharge without warning. A man, weary to his bones, pulling a loaded gun from a wagon by the barrel, could accidentally shoot himself or the person standing next to him. Lightning strikes were a real and terrifying threat on the vast open prairie, where you are often the tallest object for miles around. As you trudge numbly through the long afternoon, you are navigating a deadly gauntlet, fighting the terrain, the water, the unpredictable weather, and the ever-present danger of your own deepening exhaustion. The dusk of despair, exhaustion and isolation. Around 5 p.m., after another 4 hours of walking, the wagon master finally finds a suitable place to camp for the night. The criteria are brutally simple: access to water, no matter how poor, and some grass for the starving, exhausted animals. As the wagons are slowly maneuvered into the traditional circle for the night, a wave of profound relief might wash over you. The walking is finally over. But the work is not by a long shot. The next 3 hours are another frantic flurry of essential chores, all performed by bodies already pushed far past their physical limits. The men unhitch the groaning oxen and immediately begin checking the wagons for damage, loose wheels, cracked axles, torn canvas. The women and children, meanwhile, set about building a fire and preparing the evening meal. Maybe it's a hot one tonight, a small but significant luxury. If a hunt was successful, it might be fresh game, a welcome change from the relentless monotony. More often, however, it's the same old salted meat, bacon, and hard bread. It's during these quiet, darkening evening hours that the immense psychological weight of the journey truly settles in. The physical exhaustion is a given, a constant companion, but it's the mental and emotional toll that quietly, insidiously destroys people from the inside out. One traveler, Luzena Stanley Wilson, summed it up perfectly, calling the journey a plodding, unvarying monotony. It was a soul-crushing, spirit-breaking grind, life stripped down to its most brutal and repetitive elements: walk, work, eat, sleep, repeat. The constant low-grade stress of survival, the gnawing fear of what lurked just beyond the flickering firelight, and the deep, aching homesickness all began to fester in the quiet of the evening. You are thousands of miles from anything familiar, from anyone you left behind. This profound isolation was especially hard on the women, who were often torn from their communities and support networks, forced to face childbirth or the heartbreaking loss of a child, completely and utterly alone in the vast, uncaring wilderness. This relentless pressure could, and did, lead to complete mental breakdowns. The most infamous and tragic case is that of Elizabeth Markham. Overwhelmed by the crushing hardship of the trail, she reportedly refused to go any further one day. When her husband eventually sent their son back to get her, she reappeared at the wagon train without the boy. After the meager dinner is eaten and the dishes are cleaned, there might be a brief moment of social time around the communal fire. But for most, the exhaustion is too deep, too complete. You stare numbly into the flames, with the vast, silent, and intimidating darkness pressing in from all sides. The firelight offers a little physical warmth, but it can't chase away the deep, crushing loneliness and the chilling, inescapable realization that you have to wake up in just a few short hours and do this all over again. The long, dark night. No rest for the weary. By 8 p.m., the camp is mostly quiet. The exhausted travelers have retreated to their tents or wagons, and the night guards take their lonely positions, rifles at the ready. For you, it's time for what should be a deep, restorative sleep. But true, uninterrupted rest on the trail is a fantasy. a forgotten luxury. Your bed is nothing more than a blanket on the hard, unforgiving ground. If you're lucky, a thin canvas tent offers a little protection from the elements and the countless things that crawl and rustle in the night. As you lie down, every single muscle in your body screams in protest. Your feet are swollen, blistered, and raw. The ground beneath you is cold and lumpy, every rock and root digging into your back and hips. The thin blanket is no match for the plunging nighttime temperatures of the plains. A deep, biting cold seems to seep right out of the earth and into your bones, a cold that you can never quite escape. And the prairie night is anything but silent. It is filled with a symphony of unnerving sounds, the high-pitched yipping of coyotes, the distant, mournful howl of a wolf, and 100 other indistinct rustles and snaps in the deep darkness just beyond the dying embers of the fire. Every unfamiliar sound is a potential threat, a reason for your already frayed mind to race. Is that a predator? A snake? A person? Your mind, unable to switch off, churns with anxiety. You think about the dangerous river you have to cross tomorrow, the dwindling food supply in your wagon, the persistent dry cough your youngest child developed this afternoon. Sleep, when it finally comes, is shallow, fitful, and broken. You are never truly at rest, because you know on a primal level that this is just a pause, not an end. That jarring 4 a.m. bugle is only a few hours away. This single day has been a relentless 24-hour assault on your body and your spirit. You were woken by a gunshot and driven immediately to hard labor. You walked for 10 punishing hours, constantly dodging death from your own wagon. You drank water that could kill you from the inside out, and crossed rivers that could drown you in an instant. You ended your day with more labor, haunted by isolation and a growing sense of despair. Now, lying in the cold, oppressive dark, you finally understand the unvarnished truth. Survival in the Wild West had nothing to do with quick draws or heroic stands against outlaws. It was a slow, grinding, attritional war fought every single day against the environment, against rampant disease. What you've just experienced is a single 24-hour cycle on the Overland Trail, a day repeated with punishing consistency for months on end. For the hundreds of thousands of people who made the journey, this was the stark reality of the American West. It's often said there were an average of 10 graves for every mile of the 2,000-mile Oregon Trail, most of them unmarked, effectively making it the nation's longest graveyard. A sudden, violent bout of dysentery was infinitely more deadly than a gunfight. An infected cut from a simple kitchen knife could fester and become a death sentence. A simple accident, born of pure fatigue, was by far the most common form of violence on the trail. The true story of the West is not one of glorious conquest, but of grim endurance. It's a story of profound, almost unimaginable hardship, of incredible loss, and of a human resilience that is difficult for us to truly fathom from the comfort of our modern lives. To have lived through one single day on the trail, to have faced all that we have described, and to have woken up the next morning ready to do it all over again was a monumental, almost superhuman achievement. The real heroes of the Wild West weren't the gunslingers or the lawmen of legend. They were the anonymous men, women, and children who survived. If this look into the real unvarnished Wild West was eye-opening, make sure you subscribe for more hidden histories. Let us know in the comments which of these daily dangers you think would have been the most terrifying to face. And so, dear dreamer, as the echoes of history fade and the quiet of the night settles in, may your mind find peace and your dreams take you to places even time cannot touch. Until next time, sleep well and dream deeply.